president of the nation just delivered his Democracy Day speech. Of course, just as the name implies, he was harping on democracy, the benefits of democracy, what it is supposed to be, how to settle conflicts in a democracy, how that the fact that it's a democracy and you have diverse opinions, so there'll be differences, but then you go through legal means to settle differences and not Jojo, as they say, and not war. Among other things he talked about, plus the, back and forth with Labour. We have Dr. Constance here, and we'll look at just some of the points, and then we'll look at what the headlines are saying, the papers are saying in their headlines. Constance, good morning to you. Glad to have you.
Good morning, Andy, and good morning.
Join us this morning. And just like I said a while ago, the president talked about democracy, the bedrock of democracy being the fact that you will have conflicting ideas, diverse perspectives, but then, because we're human beings, but then you don't resolve differences by illegal means. You Jojo and not war. What do you make generally of the president's speech on this Democracy Day?
Yeah, certainly, Indy, you resolve conflicts or try to resolve conflicts amicably. I mean, the president spoke for about 20 minutes. This speech was much expected by the generality of Nigerians. From yesterday, we knew that he was going to be addressing us by 7 a.m., and he has done so. In general, the speech sounded okay. There was nothing out of the ordinary. He made some cogent points, which many would agree with him. He also started by remembering a lot of the people that have in the past contributed to the democracy that we have today, the struggles that we had to go through to get here. And he mentioned some very, very important names. Abraham Adesanya. When I was listening and he said Abraham Adesanya, I remembered that so strongly with some nostalgia, because when I was a young reporter, I think when Abraham Adesanya was 70, I did a report on him. It was such a wonderful report that my editor, I was in the newsroom then in this day newsroom, my editor had to come downstairs from, I think, the second floor to ask for Constance and say, did you write this piece? I said, yes. He is such a man that did so much in the Southwest region and in Nigeria as in general. He made his own contributions when he was alive. It was someone that a lot of people reckon with, and will remember up to today. Then he also mentioned Athan Wankwo. He talked about Chukwemeke Zife, Bola Ige. Also Bola Ige. How can we forget Bola Ige? It was once the Chief Justice of Nigeria, but also he died in a very tragic way, and his death, unfortunately, has not been resolved up to date. Bola Ige was such a man, a forthright man, and so it was good to remember him. He talked about Adekunle Ajasi, Gani Faweyemi. How can we forget Gani Faweyemi? The civil rights lawyer that did everything within his power to make sure that Nigeria did the right thing. He had a lot of people in his chambers that he also trained to become civil rights lawyers and, to toe the path of just truth. There was also Chima Oba, and and Beko Ransom Kuti. And then, of course, he mentioned the people that are still alive, Olisa Awakoba, and a couple of other people, Nigerian journalists.
Also himself.
He gave, he recognized Nigerian journalists, and what they have done for democracy. He talked about how a lot of people had to flee the country, to run away, for their safety. But here we are still in that democracy that they fought for. He mentioned some very important newspapers, Punch, The Guardian, National Concord, Time Magazine. Unfortunately, National Concord is no longer here, but The Guardian and Punch are still publishing, which is a good thing. And then he talked about some other things. He said Nigeria is the most popular democracy in the world. No, sorry, in Africa. Yes, it is in Africa. However, what's the quality of that democracy? That's the question. And then he stated that we've established a tradition of holding transparent, open elections. I don't know about that. I don't think a lot of people will agree with the president on that point. When we are celebrating democracy today, we have to do a self-reflection. And in that self-reflection, I think some would say our elections haven't been transparent at all. They haven't met the standard that we set for ourselves, let alone the standards that are set globally. And so therefore, there's work to be done on that front. And it also goes on to say that democracy aims to create leaders who serve the people. I think the president is talking to himself there. Are you serving the people? All the politicians in the National Assembly, in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, all over the country, are they really serving the people? I think that's a critical point that we have to think about. If you are going into politics, or you're in a position of authority or leadership, are you there for private gain? And then he goes on to say that the real test is whether we shall defend democracy. That's a big question. At this point in Nigeria, Kechi and Ndi, I think that a lot of people are exhausted, to say the least, with what is going on in the country. Are they ready to continue to defend the democracy? The 2023 election in Nigeria was a watershed. I think in that election, a lot of young people that had never voted before went out to the streets and voted. And, they were quite disappointed with the outcome, with how the elections were counted, how the votes were counted, and what transpired at the end of the day.
Well, he talked about the fact that, yes, you will have challenges,
yes,
of several sorts.
Yes.
The question becomes staying on, guarding, defending democracy, because there'll be challenges like the ones you're talking about. Then whether they're going to give up defending democracy, that the question is not actually fighting the fifth columnist, but is defending the democracy. Then he said democracy is the best form of governance.
Well,
yes.
so
whether people will
just
agree with
to
him or
add
not.
to that, Dr. Constance, you actually posed a very important question: what's the quality of that democracy? And I think he used this speech to basically show Nigerians, or reiterate to Nigerians, that look, this is what our administration is about. And he used that example of what happened last week. He said, look, in this spirit, we have been negotiating in good faith with organized labor. And if you remember, when they went on strike, we did not oppress any worker that went on strike, but yet we called them in and broke bread with them and negotiated with them. Just giving that example.
No, but that's the least.
I know that's the least.
That's the least we should expect from him. Yeah,
of course, he's using that speech.
Yeah, but that's the least we should expect from him.
Of course, just to reiterate that. I mean, I guess it doesn't work in his favor, but he's just using that as an example to say, look, this is how democracy is supposed to be. And I understand that's the least that's expected of any administration or any democracy, really. And he also went on to talk about how Nigeria needs a lot of reforms, and the reforms that his administration has brought, like he always says, has brought a lot of pain, like you're talking about, Dr. Ikoku. And he's also telling Nigerians to be patient with him, and he understands that pain. What are your thoughts on these sort of things that he has used this Democracy Day speech to reiterate?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the point where, when he said we must commit to the realization of economic democracy. I think that is so important, and because given the situation of the country today, a lot of Nigerians think that the APC, the All Progressives Congress, which is his party, has not done enough to advance the Nigerian economy. In fact, some people would say that they are not sure of what they are doing. The weaknesses, the failures are just too many, and there has to be a turnaround, from what we are seeing today. So it was important for the president to mention that he says, I feel your pain. And then he says also that these are necessary steps to be taken. It talks about reforms. Yes, there are reforms to be done in the Nigerian economy, not only in the economy, in the political system as well. There are so many reforms that require or need to be carried out. And I think Nigerians understand that, there are times that you have to sacrifice. But the question also is it only Nigerians that are required to sacrifice?
Are the leaders sacrificing? When you talk about building in this particular time that we're having what he called economic economy, what he said about economy being unbalanced and built on flawed foundations, therefore the need for reforms, when you talk about the fact it was in this season that the vice president's house, which cost about 40-something billion, I understand, was built. It was in this season that he had the members of NAS going home with 160 million SUVs for each of them. In this season, I think about 90-something billion was budgeted for sending people on Hajj, and so many things like that. It was in this season you had to increase the electricity tariff, remove the petrol subsidy without planning adequately how it was going to affect the generality of Nigerians, because it always has a spiral effect on the economy and on the lives of Nigerians. I mean, these are the questions that Nigerians will ask the president.
Yeah, you know, you have mentioned something very critical, you know, talking about the removal of this fuel subsidy without, you know, thinking it through what you're going to do next. I think in the spirit of democracy, actually, in that sense, meaning that when something like that happens, you should be, you know, vulnerable in coming to tell the people or explain to the people that, yes, we have made mistakes. This is where we're going, but you know there were missteps, and so can you forgive us? We're going to make a U-turn, something like that. You know, it's important for the president and his team to do that. To in the process of doing that, I think it gives a sense that the president and his team and the leaders of the country are sincere, and that they are genuine and they mean well for the people, not only for themselves but for the people. So I think it's critical that the president and his team do something about that.
Okay, you're saying it's critical that they ask, not that they are sincere, but that they should be sincere. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they should be sincere. I think leadership, it's about telling the truth, even in difficult times, even in difficult circumstances. I think when people see that you're doing the right thing and you mean well, I think they will understand and they will go down that road with you.
And I think he's doing the right thing at the right time. He talked about leaders being there for service. The big question for leadership in Nigeria, at every level, really, is do they understand that leadership is about service and not about them? And how do you serve the people? You understand ministry, or being a minister, that word means service. It's simple. So the question Nigerians will ask is, are they really serving the people in the way they are going about the things they do, both at the executive level, federal level, now state level, especially with what is happening with Labour. They're going to soon send a law. They haven't agreed yet, but they will soon send a law to the National Assembly. Are they serving the people?
Yes, so it goes to the question again, redefining what a leader means in our country, in our nation. Who is a leader? Is a leader someone who recklessly takes decisions that are not in the interest of the people? Is a leader someone that is involved in vote buying and rigging of elections and has the money or the resources to spend on elections and gets there in a questionable way and then begins to trans the people to behave in a manner that he should not? So these are questions that need to be addressed in Nigeria as we think about Democracy Day.
In fact, the former President Goodluck Jonathan just a while ago talked about that democracy in that lecture at the Villa, where he said that the children of the political elite go about spraying dollars, and that is wrong. That's a wrong picture. That the children or the politicians themselves, because they should be cautioning their children or their words not to do this. Jonathan spoke about that.
In fact, yeah.
And the fact of a good, in fact, he was addressing the president, 25 years on, establishing a good electoral system while the people are satisfied.
In fact, let's even talk about Jonathan's speech yesterday. When I listened to it, I thought that it's one of the most substantial and frank speeches by a former president in Nigeria in recent times. Not to compare it with, the letters of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. His letters are legendary. His letters really go straight to the point, and hits it. But, President Jonathan said so many things, that was very essential for democracy in our country and the survival of our nation. He talked about the zero-sum game.
Yeah.
He said, we cannot continue in a system where the winner takes completely all, totally. It's not good for our unity. It causes a lot of friction. It causes a lot of tension. So we have to sit back, think about it. He tasked the National Assembly, that makes laws, to sit and think, what can we do about this? Someone gets 40% of the votes, and after the elections, he goes home with nothing. There has to be a way to create a role in government for that party. And then also, I think that also takes us to the other question. Okay, you win, but you do not have 50% of the vote. How can someone who is a president not have at least 50% plus one? 50% plus one or 50% of the vote. It's also something that we need to think about, because in the laws, I think what we have today, you don't need to have 50%. So the votes were shared between the APC, the PDP, and the Labour Party in the last elections, and I think that is why we're discussing this. So the National Assembly that is there to make laws, something for them to think about. And I think also Jonathan went on to talk about the diversity of Nigeria. He says, yeah, democracy is good, but every country has to devise a democracy that works for it, a democracy that suits it. You cannot continue to do copy and paste. And then when you look around, he's telling the truth. When you look around countries like Switzerland, it is a democracy, but it's totally different from the democracy that is practiced in the United Kingdom or the democracy that is practiced in the United States of America. It means that you are sensible, you understand your environment,
you're creative,
you have to
tinker,
work. Yes, you have to think. Thanks for that word, because that also reminds me that it is time that the intellectual class of Nigeria crawl out from wherever they are and begin to get themselves involved. I think what we have in Nigeria today is just the political class, a lot of them with questionable characters running our show, and then people sit back to complain, where is our intellectual
Constance,
class?
because they make the law. Okay, get you.
Yeah, I think we have to go to the paper review now and just take a look at what's making some of the front
just
pages.
To add that, and we'll go to that.
Okay.
Constance, because they make the laws, and until the laws are tinkered with. So, I mean, Baka talked about the fact that if you say 62%, is good for the labor. What is good for the good is good for the gander. So why doesn't the National Assembly earn 60%? The executive 62% rather. So you have an equal playing field. Then you can have the intellectuals you're talking about coming, because you'll not be any longer who has the greatest war chest, because that's the politics we play. You can go ahead and get you.
No, it's fine. You can take the papers.
No, go ahead with the beginning. I'm not yet at the papers now.
All right, we'll have this day, our first paper as usual. On the front page, I'll never turn my back on you. That's what we've been discussing here in the studio. President Tinubu tells Nigerians on June 12, Democracy Day, recalls how others risked their lives for democracy. Promises to send bill on new minimum wage to National Assembly soon, as he declares new wage negotiated in good faith. We don't know if there has been an agreement on the new national minimum wage. That's his picture there as he was giving his Democracy Day address. U.S. President's son, Hunter Biden, convicted in federal gun trial. Joe Biden, Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with our love and support. NUPRC slashes signature bonuses for oil blocks to $10 million for deep water, $7 million for shallow water. And at the top mats there at Democracy Lecture, which took place yesterday here in Abuja at the State House, former President Jonathan says, winner takes all politics, inimical to unity and political justice. Our analyst here, Dr. Ikoku, was just speaking about that. He also asked President Tinubu to dilute politics of religion and region. Says avalanche of election petitions at every poll is embarrassing. That's this day.
All right, let's look at the punch, what we've been discussing, Democracy Day. Tinubu hails Abiola Alvarez once against anti-democratic forces. President vows to preserve democracy, persists Nigerians over economic hardship. And then the sad story within this week, Tinubu AU mourn Malawi VP, others killed in a plane crash. What a sad day for Malawi. Supreme Court begins sitting as states counter FG on LG funds. Dangote Refinery commences PMS supply July. Lagos Calabar Highway FG reroutes mega project, slashes lanes to 6. And oil bid round FG Cup's Cup signature bonus from 200 million to $10 million. That's for the bunch.
The Nigerian Tribune this morning, June 12th anniversary, Tinubu warns of internal threat to undermine democracy. Meanwhile, court nullifies amendment to Rivers Assembly Commission law. And Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, that's just at the bottom there, says over 300 companies shut down, 380,000 jobs lost. That's within just 2 months.
And Daily Trust, Tinubu may reshuffle cabinet, create new ministries, some ministers to go. I'll send a bill on minimum wage to National Assembly soon, the president. Jonathan, National Assembly should consider best model of government for Nigeria.
On the front page of the New Telegraph, June 12, remembering election that reshaped Nigeria. Federal government seeks $2.5 billion World Bank loan to partly fund renewed hope projects. That's coming from Minister of National Planning, Bagudu. Meanwhile, Senate disowns NOA's version of the national anthem.
All right, a Tribune newspaper says Tinubu warns of internal threat to undermine democracy. Okay, Afenifere differs with FG Tinubu on LG autonomy. And 5 die, 60 hospitalized in suspected Lagos cholera outbreak. Over 300 companies shut down, 380,000 jobs lost within 2 months. This is coming from the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria reps. CSOs, others lament impact of recent electricity tariff hike. That's for the Tribune.
The I-Paper this morning, Labour promises £12 an hour to care workers. Now, every care worker in England will be entitled to that new minimum wage if Labour wins power. All
right, the Mirror, Sunak's idea of hardship. Rich, I didn't have a dish.
Financial Times this morning, gun charges, Biden sticks by convicted son. Meanwhile, Sunak's £17 billion tax cut promise fails to satisfy Tory appetite for boldness. Also, rivals tap London's rich Americans for cash at dueling U.S. election fundraisers.
The Independent, Sunak's final gamble, cut taxes by £17 billion and migration by 50%.
Okay, we still have Dr. Constance Ikoku here in the studio with us as we look at those top stories making the front pages. If we can pull up This Day, our sister publication. On its front page, we've talked about Tinubu's speech, also the former president's speech. Let's talk about what's happening in the U.S. U.S. President's son Hunter, beg your pardon, Biden, found guilty on 3 felony counts charges. Now his dad, who is the president, says, look, I'm the president, but I'm also a dad. And he says he has vowed not to pardon his son. Dr. Ikoku, this has been a case that has been ongoing in the U.S. and everybody just feels like, look, we don't care if it's the president's son. If he's guilty, he's guilty. We have to go through the route, the correct routes for the case.
Yes, Nkechi, I think it's been an awful 2 days, yesterday and today, for the Bidens. Unfortunately, their son was convicted on all 3 counts, of owning a gun or buying a gun illegally, and also lying about it under the influence of narcotics. And the president, as you would imagine, he is a human being. He said, it's a difficult time for our family. He is my son. However, I'm the president, and I believe in the rule of law. Yeah. Therefore, he has to serve his time. If he's jailed, although he says, or he suggested that Hunter will be appealing the judgment. I think generally when you follow the conversations from the U.S., I think a lot of people feel like, yes, the U.S. judiciary was tested yet again, and it withstood that test in favor of a robust judicial system that works for the people and not for one particular man. And apart from that, there was also former President Donald Trump, who recently was also convicted on all 34 counts. 34 counts. They didn't let him go at all. He could not escape. I think that's a testament to a system that has strong foundations, a system that was built, to serve the people, a system where it's difficult for one person to be above the law. One person cannot be above the law. Everybody, should work or operate within the law. If you are found wanting or if you are found guilty, then you will pay for it. I think that's the simple message that one should take away from this. And as Nigerians, watching what is going on in that country, can you imagine India and Nkechi, if this was our president in our country, do you think that it would be the same? I don't think if he would have, the judgment or the case would have gotten thus far. So we have to ask our questions. What kind of system do we want to build for our country? What kind of system do we want to live in? And what kind of system do we want to bequeath to the generations to come? I think, again, it's June 12th, Democracy Day. Is a time of reflection, is a time to think about what we are doing in the country. And if whatever we're doing, we've been doing since 1999 makes any sense at all. If it doesn't make any sense, we still have the opportunity to tweak it. To tweak it, to reform it, to do the right thing. And I think the generations to come will thank us for that.
The real question is those who are supposed to tweak it. Are they willing to tweak it?
Well, also indeed, one thing that a lot of middle-class Nigerians complain, whether the ones that live here in the country or live in the diaspora, we also sit back in our nice, houses and complain. If the middle class do not get involved in what is going on, I don't think that we have any right to complain. Yeah. You have to get in there and be involved. It is tough, but if we are not getting involved, we don't have a right to say anything at all.
That's it. If you don't vote.
Because those countries you are run into, someone fought.
Oh, yeah.
They fought for them to be where they are today. So don't go to someone else's country, relax and having a nice time, and then you heap curses on your country.
It's your country.
People have to do the work. And nobody's coming to save Nigeria. Foreign investors, NGOs, international, they're not coming to save Nigeria. It is Nigerians that will save
Over
their
time,
country.
that's been spoken loudly everywhere. You're not going to have people come help you solve your problem. You know where it pinches you, and you know how to solve it. You should know how to solve it. Let's look at daily trust. Tinubu may reshuffle cabinet, create new ministry, some ministers to go, else and bill on minimum wage. Is it too early? What do you think? For
cabinet reshuffle? Well, I don't know. It depends on the president. The other day we had a 1-year anniversary of the president, and all the ministers gave a scorecard or explained and shared with Nigerians what they have done so far. Some people are impressed. A lot of people are not impressed. So the ball is in the court of the president. Do you think that the people that you appointed to work with you, are they delivering on the mandate the way that you expect from them? If they are not, then it's not too early to have a cabinet reshuffle. You know, why sit in an office and waste space and you're not doing, you're doing literally nothing? So I think if the president decides that it is time to have a cabinet reshuffle, to bring in new energy, to bring in new ideas, I don't think it's out of place. But also the president himself, that leads, has to lead also with that energy.
That's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Ikoku, for being here with us at this early morning. You basically joined us for the whole show.
I know.
Thank you so much for that. And that's where we end it here on Daybreak.